Feet can be hard to draw if you don't understand the structure. In this lesson, we'll break feet down into major landmarks, simple shapes, and then we'll do a step-by-step drawing at the end. Before drawing the toes and the details, we want to understand the foot as a 3D form. So let's break it down. We're looking for a box for the heel, a wedge shape for the midfoot, and a smaller block for the toes. So it goes block, wedge, block, and that's easy enough from the side profile, but what does this actually mean when we're talking about a 3D form? Obviously, this is the most simplified rendition, but it's a good place to come back to if you ever get confused. The next step would be extruding these shapes to make them 3D. In practice, it'll look like this. So here's the heel, and the midfoot, and the toes. Now that we've extruded the shape, I want you to notice a couple of things. The block that makes up the heel actually becomes thinner at the top where it connects with the ankle. The inside of the midfoot is where the arch is, and the arch usually doesn't make contact with the ground. The entirety of the outside foot, however, where the fifth metatarsal is, that makes contact with the ground. These are the contact points of the foot along the floor. So the inside of the foot looks like this: heel, arch, ball of the foot, toe. And the outside of the foot looks like this: heel, arch, ball of the foot, toe. You can see that the inside of the foot makes contact with the heel, the ball of the foot, and the toes, whereas the outside of the foot, the entirety of it touches the floor. Let's draw the same thing from the inside. So this would be the inside of the foot. As you can see, the arch on the inside is illustrated by this kind of concave area. I want to talk about the midfoot because that's probably the most confusing part of the foot. From the side profile, it does look like a wedge, but it's actually more like a skewed box that has one side raised. Probably better if I just draw it out for you than explain it. The pinky toe corner of the midfoot looks just like a regular rectangular prism. The difficulty comes with the tallest point, which moves upwards. So this is where the ground contact would be back here, and this is where the ground contact would be on the other side. As you can see, there's quite a bit of space where the arch moves up. Here's potentially what it would look like with a shadow cast on the ground. Another thing I want you to notice is from the top view, just gonna split up the foot again into its main parts. The foot curves in on the inside. As you can see, the outside of the foot is completely straight, but the inside of the foot curves inward. Outside, inside. Okay, so those are the basics. Now I'm going to get into the details. I'm going to create a big 2-pager that you can refer to next time you're drawing feet. The ends of the toes generally curve and are shortest on the outside of the foot. The tallest point of the foot is not directly in the center of the midfoot, but rather offset and connects with the big toe. So the tallest point of the foot is always in line with the big toe. Speaking of the big toe, it is the only toe with one knuckle. The rest of the toes have 2 knuckles, which is very strange, but good to know when you're drawing feet. Footprints are kind of a strange shape, and they have a direct correlation with how high the arch is of the person. Now, obviously that is extremely individual, but once you draw your heel, your midfoot, and your toes, you can use those as guidelines for drawing in that footprint. And the only thing you really need to know is that the ball of the foot actually makes up about half of the midfoot. Again, the heel is much thicker where it makes contact with the ground. When you start rendering the foot and softening these shapes, you'll see that the heel sticks out a little bit further than the ankle does. And remember that the entirety of the outside of the foot makes contact with the ground. And you can see here that the big toe is connected to the ankle via a rigid bone. When the heel is lifted because your character is walking, the ball of the foot stays in contact with the ground. Okay, I think that's enough to get going. Let's do a full breakdown and render of the foot. Okay, I'm starting with the leg here, calf, knee's gonna be up here somewhere, ankle bone, and this would be what the connection is like down here. Okay, block in that heel bone. There's our wedge shape for the midfoot, and now the curved toes. Okay, there you go. You can see the box for the heel, the wedge for the midfoot, and the box for the toes. Now let's render these out. I'm gonna lighten this with a kneaded eraser, and I'm just gonna start softening these shapes. Another thing to note is that the separations of the toes don't actually reach the end of the toe box because the articulation point is behind the innermost part of the separations of the toes. Okay, lovely. Let's find the shadow shapes. Looks good. Let's lighten it again and erase some of the harder guidelines. I'm gonna use some graphite, just blocking in the foot right now with basically pencil shavings. Okay, now I've got all my midtones down. I'm gonna refine this with an eraser. Once I got the highlights in, I'm going back in with my brush and softening the form shadows. Now with some hatching marks, I'm just going in and accentuating the form. I'm just drawing in some final details. This is the knuckles, the wrinkles of the knuckles. So there you go, that's how I might go about rendering the foot if I were to do it in graphite. And just like anything else, I would be careful with the level of detail that you use on the smaller areas, because you better be ready to put that level of detail in the rest of your image too, just to make it look balanced. Unless of course you're deliberately doing that for the focal point. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you learned something. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to cover. Now get out of here, go make some art.